Right. Good evening, colleagues. Welcome to this meeting of the Area 1 Planning Committee. For the benefit of those watching on our YouTube channel, members of the committee are present in the chamber and these members will be voting on proposals this evening. Other members of the council may be participating via MS Teams and they can take part in any discussions. They can ask questions, but crucially they cannot vote. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings are going to be conducted. Before we start with the formal business of the committee, we're going to confirm attendance of voting members by carrying out a roll call. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Chair. When I call your name, please, can you confirm that you are present? Councillor Hook?
Present.
Councillor King?
Present.
Councillor Upwell?
Present.
Councillor Barton?
Present.
Councillor Bridge?
Present.
Councillor Clokey?
Present.
Councillor Cope?
Present.
Councillor Hoskins?
Present.
Councillor Mehmet?
Yeah.
We have received apologies from Councillor Oliver. Councillor Perry?
Present.
Councillor Pilgrim?
Present.
Councillor Rose?
Present.
Councillor Tunstall? I confirm we have 13 voting members present.
Thank you very much. And can we introduce our officers? Very much.
Anna Parker, Development Manager.
Edward Jones, Tree and Landscape Officer.
Daily One, Democratic Services Officer.
Very much. Now we're going to skip through to the meat of the meeting tonight, and I'm going to ask Edward Jones to introduce the matter go through it.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, before we do that, we've just got to agree the minutes from the last. Oh yes, that's it. We can agree the minutes from the last meeting. Everybody agree that that's correct.
Agreed.
And apologies from the floor. I've got this in the wrong order tonight. Awfully sorry. We've got one set of apologies from Councillor Oliver. So, has anybody got any declaration of interest? No, that's good. And is it everybody's happy with the minutes from last time? Thank you very much. Those. Thank you. And I draw your attention to the glossary and supplementary matters. And now we're at item 6. So thank you very much. You're on, Edward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So the matter before us today is to consider whether or not to confirm a tree preservation order. The Tunbridge Morning Borough Council Russettings Riding Lane Hildenborough Tree Preservation Order 2024, which is the title of the order, was made on the 8th of October 2004. The order was made in respect of a single woodland designation, which is W1 of the order and includes mixed deciduous and coniferous trees that are standing within the woodland marked W1 on the map. Following the making of the order, copies were served in accordance with regulations, as well as copies having been sent to members, parish council and agents dealing with applications. The council has received one objection to the order, which was submitted in accordance with 6. The reasons for objection, making of the order and the council. Right, okay, sorry. Did everyone get everything I said? Okay. The options for decision, the council can decide to either confirm the order, either with or without modifications. Just to note for members, it's not possible to make substantial modifications to a tree preservation order at confirmation. You can't, for example, add additional trees to be protected, but you can make minor changes if there are, for example, spelling mistakes. If the order is confirmed, it will provide long-term protection for the specified trees. The other option is to decide not to confirm the order, and in that instance, the protection of the trees will stop and the order won't be endorsed. The officer's recommendation is that the council confirm the order without modification, and following that, we will notify persons of the decision to confirm the order in accordance with the regulations. What I've got up on the slide now is a copy of the first schedule of the order, which briefly shows that there are no trees individually designated within an area or a group, but you've got the one woodland designation there. The right-hand side as you look at it. Then I've got a copy of the tree preservation order map. The woodland is W1. Essentially, you see it as the black outline around the area adjacent to the road and pond at the property of Littlewood. This is a satellite image from Google Maps showing where the trees are. So it's the wooded area, again, adjacent to Riding Lane, and then sort of goes back around that sort of private driveway that comes off there. Satellite image further afield to show ribbon development that's going along Riding Lane, and the location of the site and the subject trees in respect to that. Then an image from Google Street View. The image is dated July 2023. The trees that are subject of the order are those effectively in the centre of the image, sort of above the car in the road there, and above and behind the houses that you can see. Then got some photos that I took on the 10th of September 2024, showing subject trees from the roadway and the grass verge opposite, showing how they look and appear from the street scene as a area there. And then just for completeness, photos taken earlier this week, the 25th of March 2025, which show the trees without leaves on. Are there?
Right, thank you very much, Edward. That's very comprehensive. I'd like to invite Mr. Paul Ashby to come and address us, who has objected to the order. If you'd like to come down here, that would be great. Thank you very much. You've got 3 minutes. If you just indicate when you. Yes, yeah, super. Thank you very much.
My family and I live on plot 1, Littlewood, Riding Lane, since purchased from the executors of the previous owners in June 2024. We are speaking to oppose the blanket tree preservation order, which we believe may have arisen after a member of the public persistently and erroneously reported, amongst other things, that we were infilling the pond with builders' rubble. In fact, we were dredging the pond and undertaking general management, all under the advice of our ecologist, whilst awaiting consent for a variation to the existing planning permission. Your officers and local members subsequently witnessed this. We bought Littlewood for its countryside character and were fully aware from the outset that the trees fronting Riding Lane was to be protected and remain, as this was part of the existing planning permission, and have invested time and money to enhance trees, pond and wildlife, which we look forward to enjoying for many years. Although not opposed to TPOs on the high level value trees, we feel that a blanket TPO on all trees and saplings is an unnecessary restriction and blight on our property for the following reasons. 1, the trees are not under any threat as they are protected under the planning permission and not affected by our proposals. 2, the woodland has had no maintenance for many years and now requires much work to bring it to a sustainable position, for example, overhanging branches on Riding Lane. 3, the self-seeded saplings, etc., do not enhance the woodland, crowd good trees and restrict the sight lines onto Riding Lane, which is a national speed limit and could cause a serious accident. 4, the trees and saplings would need routine management, producing multiple applications annually, which would be an unnecessary use of officers' time. 5, the blanket TPO is in contradiction to the planning permission granted by the council, inhibiting vehicular access, including fire engines, and the construction of our new home. And finally, a blanket TPO would be unnecessary blight on our property, affecting our enjoyment. We would like to reiterate our full commitment to enhancing the tree and ecology on our property and are grateful for the opportunity to dismiss the narrative that I intend to pave over Littlewood. We therefore ask members to reconsider the blanket TPO and engage with us to find a workable solution for all. I'm sure our end goals do align. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thank you. Right then. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open this up. Members, as is customary, we go to the local members first. Councillor Barton's got a hand up. So we're gonna go to you first.
Riding Lane is a very long, very sweeping road. There are twists and turns. It is national speed limit. It's extremely unusual to find cars driving at national speed limit down there. I regularly cycle down there with my cycling club. I regularly walk down there. People run down there. It's on the route of the forthcoming Hildenborough road races. So it's a mixed use road. So I understand there are concerns for safety. However, it's a safe road. People generally respect the area. It's also a road that's absolutely rich with nature. It's a very, very verdant area. These trees provide part of the character for that. I've seen red kites down there. There's regularly buzzards, sparrowhawks, goldfinches, all sorts of wildlife. It's beautiful. And I'm delighted to hear that the occupant is looking after his pond and looking after the trees. However, I feel that this tree preservation order is important. Tree preservation orders are there for a reason. They're not there to make people's lives difficult. They're there to protect the trees. And I would love to be in a situation where we could just take people's words that they were going to look after the trees. Of course they were, because they enjoy them as well. However, the reality of the world is, however honourable this gentleman may be, not everybody is, which is why we have tree preservation orders in place. I've been reading an awful lot about them in the last few days. One of the questions that was raised was that of amenity and the fact that, you know, a lot of the woodland isn't visible from the road. Clearly it is from these pictures. Clearly it is from having gone down there. However, even the bits that aren't visible to the public still form part of the local ecosystem, and as such, they need to be protected. I feel all of this comes basically down to the 4.4 of the assessment from the council officers, which reads, it would not be justifiable to decide not to confirm an order. Sorry, we're on page 25. It would not be justifiable to decide not to confirm an order because a landowner did not wish to make applications for tree work. So basically, the meat of this issue is that Mr. Rusby doesn't want to apply every time he needs to do work on these trees, but basically that's how a tree preservation order works, and that's why it needs to be there. So I feel that we ought to agree with the recommendations of the council officers. I feel that this tree preservation order ought to go ahead as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barton. Councillor Rhodes.
Chairman, thank you. In normal circumstances, I would support a tree preservation order. I don't think every tree that we've currently got, every tree preservation order is in the right place, but never mind, that's a different matter. What really concerns me though, Chairman, on this is, and you heard it out of the objector's mouth, the words were have arisen after a member of the public persistently and erroneously reported, amongst other things, they were infilling the pond with builders' rubble. What happened, Chairman, I think, is that the council got to hear from this person. Mr. Jones jumped on his bike, pedalled up there and slapped this order on. Erroneously and persistently reported wrong information. Now, I have been up to, Mr. Ashby invited me up to see everything, and it's quite obvious that the report of the erroneously the pond work, filling it with rubble, was complete and utter rubbish, because he's made a very good job and it's an enormous pond. On the other side,
Councillor Rhodes, this relates to the pond, but this obviously this doesn't relate to the trees. So I'm not quite sure where you're going.
thank you for correcting me, Chairman. On the other side of the access part, which is still within W1 on the map, are more trees. Trees that I would argue could do with a damn good sorting out. Now, the existing planning permission allegedly gives protection to the trees. So what sort of protection does that actually mean? Mr. Ashby has included or has mentioned a woodland management plan. Now, what is the point of a woodland management plan if the planning permission controls the woodland anyway? How does Mr. Ashby deal with, for example, overhanging branches in Riding Lane that he may be legally required to cut back for safety? Does he have to apply every time that he wants to do that? An emergency. What about emergency work? How is that taken care of? I understand he cannot at the moment get access up his own drive to get machinery in and construct the property, or the property that's given permission, has been given permission before, because I presume that must be some large stuff, and there is overhanging stuff. I'm not sure he's got a 45-degree vision display as he exits his access at the moment, which was probably part of the condition of the planning application. Therefore, he needs to be able to cut back to 45 degrees so that he can see. It was a shame. It was a shame that this council permitted 3 houses in place of 2 houses, Chairman. I think that's where all the trouble started from. So every time Mr. Ashby now submits a tree preservation order work, there will be a delay because of our delay in our planning department. So that's not really a very acceptable situation to be in. And I'd just like to ask a question regarding number 3, little 3, under 3.3, where an application relates to an area woodland, the authority shall grant consent so far as accords with the practice of good forestry, unless they are satisfied that the granting of consent would fail to secure the maintenance of the special character of the woodland or woodland character of the area. So on one hand you can, on the other hand you can't. Chairman, as I said earlier, I will not support this because of the reason I stated at the very beginning, been done in an underhand way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You've raised an awful lot of points. I'm going to come to other councillors after I've come to Mr. Jones, because there's a lot that can be addressed there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. I wasn't aware of any reports of erroneously filling in the pond prior to the making of the tree preservation order. That had nothing to do with the making of the order. The making of the order, it was in relation to the development application and the first planning permission for demolition of the 2 properties and construction 3 replacements was very, very, very detailed in respect of trees. And after that was granted, the same applicant and agent, who was not Mr. Ashby, submitted fresh applications, Section 73 applications, which had implications for the trees at the front, and they weren't clear. There was unspecified tree felling that would have been required. So the tree preservation order was made so that the local planning authority has a measure of control, so that we can make sure that if there is tree work done as part of any Section 73 amendment, that it is acceptable and respects the need to protect that landscape feature for the public amenity. So absolutely was not aware of any reports of filling in the pond prior to the making of the order, and didn't see any works filling in the pond at the time I surveyed the trees prior to the making of the order. The other points, and please do correct me if I miss something. As far as the existing planning permission goes, there are conditions imposed which would require physical measures of protection to be erected when the development is being undertaken. For example, actually the demolition of the properties, they wouldn't be accessing it through the existing driveway of plot 1. That would actually be fenced off while the existing properties were being demolished, and it would all be going out through what I'm assuming, and again please correct me if I'm wrong, is plot 3, which is where Russetings is at the moment. That only relates to the planning permission. So it only relates to what you have to do to not unduly damage the trees while development works are going on. It doesn't provide long-term protection. The tree preservation order provides long-term protection so that we've got a measure of control, because obviously what we would like to see is we'd like to see long-term this nice green barrier adjacent to the road that helps to soften the appearance of that ribbon development and break it up, and contributes to helping preserve the rural origins of Riding Lane. In terms of various things you've talked about, overhanging branches to Riding Lane, it depends on how Mr. Ashby wants to make any sort of application. So the Highways Authority do have powers to serve a formal notice, which would require the owner of a property to cut back branches overhanging the highway to provide clearance. In my experience, they don't tend to go down that route immediately. What they do is send a letter that basically means that somebody has to gain a permission if it is a protected tree. If they served the formal notice, they wouldn't need a separate TPO consent because it would be covered by an exemption within the legislation. If they don't, then the formal consent is required. However, Mr. Ashby and others have mentioned woodland management. There is provision within the legislation for, ever since the 2012 regs came in, for a TPO tree work application to deal with repeated iterations of treatment, and also last for a greater period. So what happens with most applications is it works like the get out of jail free card in Monopoly. Somebody applies for works, they can use it only once and then need to get a fresh application, and they only have 2 years from the date that it's granted to do the works, and if they haven't by the end of that 2-year period, then they would need to obtain a fresh consent. But as I say, we now have provisions that somebody could make an application, and we have dealt with them on various sites in the borough, where somebody could say, for example, I would like to apply to every 3 years, cut back branches overhanging the road to provide clearance of 5.5 metres above the roadway, 2.5 metres above the public footpath, to ensure that the public footpath is kept clear. And we can obviously then impose a condition on that that allows that to go on, so they wouldn't need to make a fresh application each time. And again, Mr. Ashby can submit or his agent, he may not wish to submit the application himself, a woodland management plan as part of a TPO tree work application, which does deal with maintenance requirements over 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year period. We would look at that and we could grant a consent if the work was considered appropriate that would allow those repeated regular maintenance treatments. It's the same as any sort of woodland management plan that gets associated with forestry sites, so predominantly sort of dealt with by the Forestry Commission, but obviously you have a sort of objectives of the plan, what you're trying to create in the woodland, and what you do in year 1, what you do in year 2, so forth and so on. And then if it was acceptable, we could grant a consent for that, and then you wouldn't need an application every single time. You talk about emergency. There are exemptions within the tree preservation legislation from the usual application procedure. So usually what happens if you want to undertake treatment to a tree in a tree preservation order, you submit a formal application to the local planning authority, who will consider it on its own merits. One of the things that applicants, agents are required to provide is reasons. And essentially the local planning authority considers whether, having regard to the amenity value of the tree or trees and the impact of the works, whether the proposed treatment is justified with regard to the reasons put forward and any supporting documentation that's part of the application. There are, in terms of exemptions, there is an exemption that allows somebody to remove a completely dead branch from an otherwise living tree. There's also an exemption for works necessary to remove an immediate risk of serious harm. So that deals with the dangerous aspect. Now, obviously, there are requirements to give the local authority written notice of such works so that we actually know what's going on. We don't get a phone call saying the oak tree down the road is being cut and we don't know anything about it. Somebody is required to give us written notice with evidence that the works are exempt. And if we receive that, then an email goes out pretty quickly to say, go ahead, yes, we've seen this, we've assessed this, this is exempt, don't need to go through the normal process. Essentially, that is, a homeowner is concerned about a tree, they get a tree surgeon on. Tree surgeon does a very quick note, usually, because they don't like writing things to me. But they will send me something, photographs. As I say, if there's clear evidence that exemption applies, we would confirm that, and that would deal with that. There are always going to be unforeseen circumstances, that aren't emergencies, that aren't part of regular maintenance. Mr. Ashby might like to do something that he hadn't thought about, or indeed actually not just Mr. Ashby, because obviously the tree preservation order provides long-term protection that would exceed the usual span of property ownership. Maybe a future owner who might like to do something, and they could submit an application and we would look at it and then grant or refuse consent as deemed appropriate on the basis of that. In terms of Regulation 17, which is what you were referring to as being point 3.33 of the Council's committee report, basically what it stipulates is that where we've got a woodland designation tree preservation, which is what we're dealing with here, if what they are coming in with accords with good forestry, good management of the woodland, we have to grant consent. unless what they're doing is ultimately going to destroy the character of it. So we probably wouldn't allow the entire area to be in this instance. But essentially, again, if people come in with reasonable, proposals that we consider reasonable part of an application, we would usually grant consent. Right. In terms of delays, the government sets councils an 8-week target in which to deal with applications. We do try to get decisions out on time. I'm fully aware that at present, dealing with quite a large backlog, there are a number of applications that have gone over time. We are trying to get those out as quickly as we can. And there are rights of appeal, both in respect of non-determination and also if we were to refuse a planning or TPO consent and the applicant or agent was aggrieved with regard to that decision, they do have a right of appeal to the planning inspector. Essentially a re-evaluation. Has that answered all of Councillor Rhodes? Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Rhodes.
Chairman, thank you for that. This tree preservation order, woodland preservation are very prescriptive, aren't they, Chairman? Can I be told, please, though, I'd like to know the process. If let's say if an objector, let's just say if someone submits a tree preservation order, works order, and it says, let's say, tidy up area, take out one dead tree, move another, plant 4 others. What is the process for council, for the tree preservation, for the tree officer? What is the process that starts at that point, Chairman? Will we be told, please?
Would you happy with that? What's that?
Chairman, what I mean is, the officer says, and if we are happy with it, so how do we find out that they are happy with it? That's what I'm trying to find out.
So essentially, if a tree preservation order application is submitted, the first step is that it is validated to make sure that it has all of the mandatory information, that the proposals are clear. Once it is validated, it goes live on the website. We undertake public consultation. And at some point, usually towards the end of that, the tree officer will go down and have a look at the trees, subject trees, make an assessment. Essentially, what happens is I don't have delegated authority, so I don't make the decisions on TPO tree work applications. I write a delegated report that actually goes to the development manager or one of the other senior officers who has the necessary delegated authority to make the decision. Where something is not quite there, shall we say, so what somebody is proposing might be a little bit too much, and if they made a slight adjustment to the work, it might be acceptable. What I would normally do is actually send them an email and say, the reduction by 30% is a bit too much, but if you made it 20%, then we'd be happy with that as a very, very basic. Because obviously every application is dealt with on its own merits. Trees are individual living organisms, and also everyone has different reasons for their applications. So we have to look at the specific application that is submitted to us, then make the assessment. Does that help clarify matters for you?
Chairman.
I've got Councillor Cope next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Edward. That was really, really detailed and extremely helpful. I think it sounds so comprehensive, the measures in place, that I cannot see any justification for lifting what we have. Every objection or worry seems to have been laid to rest with your extremely comprehensive answer. And I feel that the procedure is there for everybody to follow. It's not there for us to make exceptions. And I know Mr. Ashby talks about wanting to protect the biodiversity of the area, and I think this is the sensible way to do it. I can't see any reason. So for me, this seems like a needless discussion. So thank you for being so comprehensive.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Barton. I've got Councillor Hoskins after you. Councillor, you put your hand up just before Councillor Hoskins.
Thank you. Sorry to question your chairmanship. Yeah, basically what Anna said, it's really comprehensive. If there are trees that, as Councillor Rhodes said, need a damn good seeing to, there is a procedure to follow to give those trees a damn good seeing to, and the rules apply to everybody. That's what they're there for. And Edward clearly knows more about tree preservation orders than possibly any other person in Kent, certainly than anyone else in this room. And it's there. The procedure's there. Let's stick with it.
Councillor Hoskins, you've been waiting forever.
Thank you. A tree preservation order on a group of trees like this is to protect the trees for a long time in the future. And it's possible that a future landowner will be less environmentally aware. So therefore, that protection surely is needed for beyond the current owner. And for me, I know you did say this as part of your very comprehensive reply, Edward, but for me, the paragraph at the bottom of page 23 is really, really clear. So if you could bear it, I'm going to read it because it just very concise. The objector or their agent could submit a single application to cover a specified programme of maintenance works over a period of time. The objector states that they have already commissioned a woodland management plan, which should include details of ongoing simple woodland maintenance, and that document could be submitted as part of a TPO tree work application for regular maintenance works. One application.
Annie, that's a point very well made. I've got Councillor King, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Hoskins, because basically it leads on to the point I want to make is I'd like to address the point Mr. Ashby made about the tree preservation order being a blight on the property. I'd like, for the benefit of the members in the room and for Mr. Ashby, to explore why that should not be the case. Presumably, the initial management plan, in alignment with the planning application, should look at the initial requirements to make sure that there is sufficient access to the property where he's going to build his new house, etc. It should also look at things like to make sure there is safe ingress and egress from the woods into Riding Lane, so that there is line of sight, so there's no potential accidents. And I don't know if that risk exists at all, but presumably the management plan would take account of that. And presumably if there is overhanging, or there are overhanging branches either on Riding Lane or anywhere else, that would be considered normal maintenance. So that's basic, and also, as was just inferred, that there is a ready opportunity to apply for any changes that occur down the road, which are considered reasonable either as maintenance or as development. And I assume that normal maintenance wouldn't be a wholesale copsing, or it wouldn't be removal of trees. So there would be reasonable limits placed on what is maintenance and what isn't maintenance, and that's what the plan would contain. I've never written one, so I don't know what it would look like. I want to reassure the fact that from Mr. Ashby's point of view, it isn't a blight on the property, and in fact it provides clarity for him and any potential resident that comes down the road. And I just want your assurance, Edward, that that flexibility along those lines does exist. Thank you.
Yeah, if you could answer that very much.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we look at each application as it's submitted, so it's up to the applicant agent to note what they are considering as normal maintenance. You are correct. They could put in, as I said earlier, provision that every so often branches overhanging the roadway and the footpath were lifted to keep that clearance. They could put in provision in terms of providing clearance from driveway, in terms of the access. Again, that is something dealt with under application. Maybe under the planning application, but that's a separate point. But yes, he could put in an application. Mr. Ashby, his agent, indeed anyone could submit a TPO tree work application. The only person in this borough who can't is probably me, because I couldn't then deal with it as an officer. But anyone could put in an application for what they would like to do as normal maintenance, and we would then look at that. And as I say, if there need to be some tweaks, we can make some tweaks, come up with a woodland management plan that, you know, should be able to cover the normal sort of things over a period of time. Yes.
And I just also confirm that we do work with applicants, and Ed works with applicants on tree applications to get it right. We don't want to be refusing these things. We want to grant them where possible.
Councillor Mehmet.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, I commend Mr. Jones on his very detailed report. It's very good. I would be happy to support confirming this order. I think it's, you know, when you're doing a large amount of building works, you know, accidents can happen with trees, and the TPO order is, you know, it's a safeguard. It provides a little bit of control to the council and just makes sure these sorts of accidents don't happen. As we've heard, if there is a need to do works to the trees, then it's, you know, a fairly straightforward application as long as those works are reasonable. But I think it's not just this property that's the sort of attention needs to be had. There's two other plots that aren't shown, that are not here tonight, and again, the woodland order helps to sort of preserve those as well. And we don't know what their intentions are, however well-meaning this property is to kind of keep the trees. And ultimately, as we've heard, the trees are, you know, there's a desire to keep them. So I can't really see how the TPO is going to make much difference, because they'll be kept either way. But I think it's a sensible safeguard during construction and things like that. So I'll be happy to support the officer recommendation.
Much. Councillor Athwell.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the way I'm feeling as well. I can understand as a homeowner that sometimes it might feel a bit galling to be told what you can and can't do, particularly when you have good intentions and you want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, you never know when a property is going to be sold on or what's going to happen next. So to me, it sounds as if the homeowner can probably do everything they want to do, but with a little bit more red tape than perhaps they'd like. But this does protect those trees. And I think with trees in general, once they're gone, they're gone. So if they're not protected and somebody else who isn't as sort of environmentally friendly decides to do something drastic, there's no bringing them back. So on that basis, for me, it's a support of the recommendation.
I've got Councillor Rhodes.
May I just add one more? I'm surprised at the words, there were to be no changes to the driveways accessing the site. Bearing in mind, it's new build, and I'm surprised we aren't asking for 45-degree vision displays. Perhaps Hannah could comment on that.
Can I just say, we're not here to discuss the planning applications. We're here to discuss the planning, the confirmation of the order. If we have any questions about the planning application, they can be taken outside this meeting.
I've got no more speakers. I had loads of questions, but you've all answered them, asked them and answered them. So thank you very much for that. I know that we've got at least one dissenting voice in the chamber. So I think we need to carry out a roll call, not a roll call, to a vote. Yeah. So yeah, the recommendation is to confirm the order. I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Councillor Athwell's seconded that. So if we can put that to the vote, that would be great. I think. I know that Mr. Ashby has come into and he's spoken very eloquently. I hope there's reassurance that a management plan can address a lot of your concerns, and that members. This is the most frustrating thing about these meetings is that you can't come back to contribute again, but you can't. I'm sorry, but so if we. I'm more than happy to talk to you, and I'm sure officers will be happy to talk to you afterwards.
Members are now voting on the recommendation from the officers. It's moved by the chair and seconded by Councillor Afwell. When I call your name, can you please indicate whether you are for, against, or abstain from this? And also, Councillor Holt,
For.
Councillor King,
For.
Councillor Afwell,
For.
Councillor Barton,
For.
Councillor Bridge,
For.
Councillor Clokey,
For.
Councillor Cope,
For.
Councillor Hoskins,
For.
Councillor Mehmet,
For.
Councillor Perry,
For.
Councillor Pilgrim,
For.
Councillor Rhodes,
Against.
Councillor Tunstall.
For.
We have 12 members voted for, 1 against. The motion is carried.
Very much. So now we've got matters for information. Agenda item 7 relates to the planning appeals that we've had come through. That's on page 39. It's a matter for the noting, and there being no further items. I'd like to call this meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your attendance. 80 minutes past 8. Sorry, I spooked you all by starting off at a strange day.